Hi, this is Victoria Vives Khuong with Nyan Khuong, my husband, and we have somebody special here again. It's the second time that Sacha Stone is with us. This time we're going to be asking questions considering joining New Earth Nation with our intentional community. So we felt that it's of great importance to share this information for some of you that may want to join New Earth Nation as well. So hi Sacha, how are you?
Good to see you again.
Yeah, good seeing you, and thank you so much for being here and offering your time.
My great pleasure.
So you have recently been in Tanzania, is that correct?
Yeah, we just got back, I think about a week or so ago. We were there for about 10, 11 days. It was fantastic.
Oh my goodness, I just wanted to ask you about that a little bit before we start the questions, just because I'm part African. And I really resonate with any information about that. So can you share about this project that you are doing there?
Sure. Well, actually, we were out there to host the African Consensus Economic Summit. New Earth Institute's chief economist, Lawrence Brahm, is the architect of the African Consensus, he was also the architect of the Himalayan Consensus, very successful sustainability economics model, and now he's created the African Consensus. So we were there to really launch that. But whilst we were there, it was at a presidential summit, but whilst we were there, we decided to spend some time with the Maasai and study a little bit about how the Maasai cosmological, cultural, philosophical, and spiritual dimension integrates with the New Earth perspective. Because this is one of the, the sort of ancient lineages of the wisdom keepers of Africa. Wow. And what we learned with these Maasai warriors is that we share almost identical perspectives in the here and now as to how to conduct ourselves in pure sovereignty and pure consciousness. Now, this was a beautiful revelation for us. So we now we're beginning already actually to develop the International Festival of the Maasai, which the New Earth will present in 2016, early 2016. So keep watching this space. But the beautiful thing there was just to discover for ourselves that, which we know anyhow, that many of these ancient wisdom-keeping indigenous traditions are all that we need to remember and re-engage with for us to shake the proverbial devil off our back now. And by devil, be clear, what I'm talking about is mind control, government, okay? I'm not suggesting we all, have a pitched battle against the local council tomorrow morning, but I am suggesting that we had better exit this macro mind control programming that we are all of us suckered into, because it's reached catastrophic failure.
We really resonate with all of this. We just came back this morning from being in the mountains. We go to the wild every single week and we live totally primitively. So we really resonate with what you are sharing. There is a way of living that is really in tune with nature and with one another. And when we come back here, we notice all the programming and all the things that we believe are necessary. So that's why we really want to bring information and transformation.
Wonderful.
Okay, so we're going to start with the questions. We have 14 questions. So the first one would be, is there a functional New Earth Nation community at this moment that we can visit?
Well, please bear in mind that we only launched the movement in July last year. So we would have to be miracle performers to have built and developed, master planned, built up a freestanding community. Of course there isn't in only a year, but what we've got our people on the ground in a couple of locations, the principal one beginning that a process of master planning and build out, and the first one right now underway is in Peru.
Okay, so we could go visit the people involved, maybe?
If you want to get involved with shovels and the dirt, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So that would be the first question.
All right, so next question. Is there any group interested in joining or associated with New Earth Nation that is close to Los Angeles that we can connect with?
I'm afraid I'm not the one to be answering these questions. These you'd have to speak to our community development team or our retreat development team. I can't answer to these kind of specific questions, but I can certainly get that answer to you by tomorrow. Find out about who in our community in the United States are prepared to start engaging. I can tell you this much, that in January we're launching the community portal, finally, after a year of developing this. And this is the social networking portal for communities who are attaching themselves to the New Earth Nation. Because you have to understand something, the New Earth Nation is not making these communities and building them and doing them. People of the world are doing that, and then they are qualifying themselves as a micronation. So local communities of people, some of whom we are inspiring, and others who have already inspired themselves into a community project, are then declaring themselves as micronations. We are able to advise them on a perfect constitution, but we invite all the communities to actually really engage with developing their own constitution, because every constitution should be representing the local value system and the local social fabric. But once that constitution has been crafted, we then invite that micronation to become a satellite micronation to the grand trust that we're creating, the universal trust. So just understand that it's not about a central organization called New Earth Nation going out and building communities. It's not what we do. We would call ourselves a business developer or a realtor if we were doing that. What we're doing is putting out the templates, creating the law framework, doing the knowledge transfer and the technology transfer for people to be able to engage themselves in identifying sovereign land holdings and then building a local community and so on. So that's naturally how that process unfolds.
Okay, and I'm sorry if we have questions that maybe are not exactly for you. I appreciate that you are letting us know that somebody else can answer. Thank you.
Actually, if I may, based on just what you answered, you brought up another question, and that's with regards to the concept of a micronation. Can you elaborate more on that, what that is, and how that fits into for us, for example, living in the United States and in LA specifically, how that would relate to the local government and the federal government?
Okay, there are 257 nations in the world, loosely speaking. There's about 200 that are directly affiliated to the United Nations, but there are about 7.3 billion human beings, living men and women on the planet. By definition, a micronation is a human being, or a family, or a community, or a village, or a town. It's a grouping of people who declare themselves to be a micronation. You have to understand there are only two things that are real in this world: people and land. Everything else is a fiction. Everything. Everything else is an idea or a totem, an institution, a corporation. They are all fictions. The only things that are real in our world are people and land. So the ideal scenario is where living men and women have a dwelling or a piece of land or a farm or an island or whatever it is, their land holding, and they declare that land holding to be the micronation, which they're perfectly entitled to do. It is only when you register your land or register your home or register your farm that you have surrendered your ownership of it and you've handed it over to the state or the crown. That's how serious registration is. And registering anything is a trick that invites you to register your car or your horse or your bicycle or your home to the state and give it up and surrender it and enter into the land of fiction, which is what governments are trying to do, have always sought to do. So a micronation is where you declare independence and declare sovereignty against that concept, that fictitious concept of government. Whether it's local, municipal, federal, multilateral, it doesn't matter. They're all fictions. That was all dreamt up by priests and kings and popes in order to try to contain and control the human family. As we now awaken from that bad dream, we begin to declare ourselves as sovereign living men and women, or sovereign micronations. So a micronation is something that declares itself sovereign from the false construct, and then ratifies its own constitution, which is a declaration, public notice. And then that micronation, even if it's an individual or a family or a small grouping, can then engage in treaties with other micronations and other nations. So in this case, we're inviting the world to engage in the covenant of fellowship and to get out of the old private contracts which were invisible. Because that is how the world has conducted itself up until now, through invisible contracts, like the birth certification process, which basically gets your parents tricked into handing the child over to the state and signing certificates and giving ownership to the state or the crown. That was a trick. And it's only that, those false contracts, like when you purchase a vehicle and you are told that you have to register the vehicle to the local agency. And that's a trick, again, where you actually surrender the vehicle to the state. They now own it, which is why they have the right under statutes and codes and bylaws to stop you. The police can stop you and penalize you and drag you out of the vehicle or clamp the vehicle or tow it away, because effectively you don't own it. The state owns it, and you've subjected yourselves to these false statutes. It's all, again, mind control, which is what government means. And we have to just become very aware of this as we awaken.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and one thing that we are also a little concerned is we don't know if Los Angeles may be like harder than other places to join New Earth Nation and really become sovereign. What is your perspective on this?
Let me answer a bit more detail in that case. What you asked at the end of your last question, what is the effect likely to be, or the response from the local or federal government? That we can guess at. The government is a fiction, is engaged in fiction, and I'm not being a radical activist here. I'm being a man who understands law by telling you that your government is acting in fraud and in treason against the people. By being in fraud, it is by definition acting in treason. That's a very serious crime. In fact, it's the most serious crime. And all governments at this stage in our evolution are acting in treason and in fraud. So it doesn't matter what the government's response is, and that should be your psychological perspective. You shouldn't give a damn about what the government thinks or says. And certainly you should not give a damn about the government having guns. You have to look to a different quanta, a different space in yourself and in your family and in your community to be able to take on the serpent in this struggle. You cannot fight the serpent using its own rules of conduct. It will kill you stone dead, which is why you should not present yourself to a courtroom. Ever. If they demand you come to a court, do not go. The court is a trick. It's a circus, okay? If you understand what the court system is and how it was constructed with the Bar Association and so on, and the summonses that you get, and even when you put your surname onto a form for the court, what does surname mean? It means surety name, that they want you to put yourself up as surety for a commercial exchange, which is why you're invited to put your name in block black capital letters on the form. When the bailiff comes to steal your goods from your living room, he gets you to sign in block black capital letters and then signature his form. That is, again, getting your consent. You're entering the contract. If you don't sign that form, he can't take your goods out of the house. People need to wake up and stop complying with a system that has declared war against them a long time ago. It's all about our awakening. And this is all an invitation for us to awaken. So the state is going to do different things depending on how you stand up in this bad dream and reclaim your sovereignty. If you know about law, the state will back down and run for its life because you can prosecute those people that are coming at you. My simple formula for dealing with the state or the crown is to go after what we call the wet ink signature. Whoever the local official was, whether it was a government official or a local chief of police or a local parliamentarian, whose signature is on a piece of paper that is breaking the law and conducting treason or fraud against you, you should go after that individual and begin a private prosecution. That's your right and your privilege as a living man or woman. But again, we're all of us suckered into not knowing that we have all the power. We are the sovereign. And the sovereign has always actually been the people. But the people, through their constitutions and the Bill of Rights and Magna Carta and what have you, outline this. We surrendered our sovereignty to a president or a system or a queen or a king on good faith, that those rulers or leaders would lead us in good faith. And they've now failed to do so. Over the last 100, 150, probably about 300 years, we've been in the diabolical clutch of leaders who have long since destroyed the remit that the sovereign, the people, gave them in early days, which is why every aspect of the US Constitution is being trampled on, and has been, really, since the 1920s, 1930s. But in recent years, the last decade, certainly since 9/11, you've seen every fundamental tenet of your Constitution in the United States utterly pissed on by your presidents, and I mean pissed on. I'm not polite about this matter because it's desperately serious. Do not forget, millions of living men and women have been murdered in their beds by your government, acting on your behalf. That blood stains every living man and woman in America. Until you wake up in this bad dream and stop permissioning your government to conduct itself in the way it is conducting itself on the international stage. So it's folks like you who are beginning the process of awakening that are going to have to be the ones that engage with the state, the system, and learn that you can conduct the private prosecutions against the officials who pretend that they have the power over you. No, they do not. You have the power, all of it. But you have to get to grips with what it takes to go into a local courtroom, get the application forms, fill out the form, and begin a private prosecution against the police, against the local official, against your parliamentarian, against your congressman, against your goddamn commander-in-chief, if needs be. That is your duty as a sovereign, as an awakened being, to take on the devil here and now, and not wait for the landscape to change miraculously, because it will not. And the sad thing is that the beloved United States of America is now being conducted as the litmus test for rolling out this new world order, this global takeover, okay? So you guys are on the front line. And we know, the rest of the world looking in knows full well that the United States is where we're going to see the very best of men standing up and women.
I feel that it's going to be really important to have that portal that you mentioned so that we can connect with other people here, because in this moment, you know, it feels a little bit like a lot of weight on our shoulders to do all of this on our own. You know, that's why one of the reasons why we reach out to you, and it would be so good to find other people here that we can meet in person and connect and do this together. So the portal sounds like really something very, very powerful.
Indeed. Well, we're planning to launch that, I believe, mid-January. And I know I've been saying this a few times in media interviews that it was supposed to be launched this last year. And we did actually build it out. And then we had to change our entire IT infrastructure a few months ago because we were growing so fast. We realized that we couldn't launch that network, that community network, the one that we had spent months developing, because it would eventually crumble. So I'm afraid we had to just learn as we were running, and we've now built out the new portals. There's a micronation portal, there's a community portal, there's the bank exchange portal, there's the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, which incidentally is the thing that's going to protect our micronation affiliates. So if you guys declare yourself as a micronation, we're going to bring our law commission behind you guys. And if your local, federal, or municipal government tries to screw with you, they'll be taking us on as well. And we will be able to advise you on how to conduct those private prosecutions against whomsoever. And I mean, starting from the local policeman who dares to knock on your door and put a footstep over the threshold, or your president. I don't give a damn who it is. They are all living men, you know, and women, and they will be held accountable for their actions as living men and women. We do not sanction this toxic notion that your head of state or your commander-in-chief is an important person. No, he is not. Every living man and woman and child is an important person.
Thank you.
Step away from the fiction. Step away from the fiction. Let's engage as real people.
Okay. So.
Let's see. Can you tell us about the trust, the New Earth Nation Trust, and how it works?
What I can do, and I would love to do this, is set you up with Greg Paul, who's our director and the head of our law and governance faculty. He's expert in the full parameters here. I'm not. I'm very stupid in these areas. But the trust is something which was created and not registered to any state or any crown. That's all you need to know, is that the New Earth Trust was set up by living men and women and indentured under natural law. And that all of that stuff, again, you can go to the existing portal and you can see how that's been formed and the background, the basis, and the treaty and so on. That's all public knowledge now. But with the new portal that comes out, I think it's going to be that much more explicit.
Thank you. Okay. So another thing would be if we would buy a piece of land and we would donate it to the trust or give it to the trust, do we retain control over what we can do with it?
Yes. Listen, please understand, again, and I'm delighted you're asking this question. And for all your viewers, I'm really happy they're going to get this response. We're not asking for any donations. I don't want to own $1 in this world. The New Earth Trust does not wish to own anything. It is a safe space for the satellite micronations, hundreds of them, thousands of them, millions of them, to be able to affix and enter into the covenant of fellowship, make use of the institute, make use of the community engagement, make use of the tribunal, make use of the zero-point banking exchange, and so on. But you keep de facto ownership of everything. But let's be clear about something here. You do not own the house that you're in right now. Even if you've paid off the mortgage and it is a so-called freehold, you do not own it. This is part of the trickery. This is part of the dream spell. The state owns it. The crown owns it. Be sure of that. You've registered it to them. You've offered it up to the Cronus. He's taken it. He owns it. Same as your vehicles. Same as your children. Same as you guys. Because your birth certificates are registered to the crown or the state. You do not own anything. You are a fiction. You are a walking fiction, both of you. Which is why when you walk down the street and a policeman chooses to bully you, he will say, "Who are you? What's your identity?" And you say, "Hey, I'm Victoria." He goes, "No, I'm asking you for your papers. I want to see your ID." So he doesn't give a damn what you say. The pure truth of the matter doesn't matter. The fact that you're in front of him and you're saying, "I am that I am the living woman that is in front of you who's asking the question." He's saying, "Give me a piece of paper that proves." Why is he asking you for a piece of paper with black block capital letters on it? Think about it. It's because the black block capital letters is the contract that puts you under the fiction. So the paper or the passport, the birth certificate, is what's important, not you. The fiction is what matters and is what is recognized, not the living woman or the living man. You will just be harvested, sent to prison, executed, whatever. Why? Why is the piece of paper and the number and the black block capital letter so important? That's because your birth certificate has been flipped into a birth bond since you were born and traded on the stock market. You are worth money to the state or the crown. This is what Babylonian sacrifice of the innocents means, okay? We've all been indentured into pure slavery since we were born, and we have been turned over, flipped like cattle on the stock market, not a joke. You're worth millions and millions of dollars. by the time you're 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. The older you get, the more your birth bond is worth and valued at. If you do go to prison, your birth bond is flipped momentarily into a prison bond, and Walmart is one of the biggest traders of your prison bonds in the United States. Check it out, people. Get interested in how you're being harvested, in how you're being traded and monetized, commercialized. Okay, I'm trying to get across to you the serious nature of the enslavement of Homo sapiens, of humanity. It's a damn sight more serious than you can imagine.
Is there a place in the world where people live more free or are able to go with this? Because I would like to see people that already live like that. It would be inspirational to me to see that it's possible.
Yes, there are, and something called genocide has been arranged for those people. So when you've got the Amazonian tribes people, or you have the Papua New Guineans, or you have the Sub-Saharan Kalahari Bushmen, or you have the Maasai in Central Africa, you have the indigenous wisdom keepers of Australia, the Dreamtimers, the Aboriginals. You have the Maoris of New Zealand. You have the Native American First Nations people, as you well know, of Canada and North America, all of whom are systemically being genocided through gambling, prostitution, drugs, alcohol, and poisoning. Okay? Why do you think we're subjecting? Why do you think we're sending in these big blue chip corporations into the Amazon, hacking down the rainforests, and giving away mining concessions in Ecuador and God knows where else? It's all about defiling the sacred earth, defiling the womb of the sacred mother, and destroying the wisdom keepers, who are the only flame keeping us alive and threading us the narrative of ancient history into the present time. Now, the good news is that the draconian element have failed in their enterprise of bringing this world into a thermonuclear meltdown, which is absolutely what the plan has been. Rogue rouge factions within the military-industrial complex have failed in their efforts. Right now, and I would suggest this week, this month, we are in an incredibly wonderful space. We're emerging from this very long sleep. The last couple of years has been a very dangerous time, but it would appear that we have entirely crossed the threshold. I don't think you need to concern yourselves too much about the so-called New World Order rolling out. There is still going to be a lot of resistance. There's going to be a lot more fireworks going off, a lot more Ebola and ISIS kind of psyop scams perpetrated by these rogue first world governments, hand in hand with the dying factions of the military-industrial complex. And when I talk about the military-industrial complex, be sure I'm not suggesting they're all rotten, but I'm suggesting that the fabric, the culture of all of those covert and secretive organizations are, by their very definition, repugnant to the light and repugnant to the true human condition. So all of that language and that old dream is falling away at this time.
Thank you. Okay.
Based on the understanding that we have entered into a contract with our government and have signed away essentially our lives and our possessions, what would be the first step to break those contracts?
I'm sorry, just briefly repeat the question. You were breaking up slightly. I was trying to follow.
How would we break those contracts? What would be the first step that we would take for that?
Okay. As I pointed out earlier, there's well over 250 nations, states out there. Every one of them has, in the last century, couple of centuries at least, evolved its own statutory codes and bylaws and legislation. So every one of them has to be practiced in a different way. We would have to look at a given nation state, look at its constitution, to be able to advise fully on how to release yourself. But fundamentally, I can give you the black and white answer, is you simply do it. You engage the Declaration of Sovereignty. That is available to anyone through the New Earth portal. You engage with establishing yourself or your family or your community as a micronation. you ratify your own constitution, and you then begin to engage that nation as a micronation via treaty with other nations. We've just last week, the New Earth Nation established full treaty with the sovereign Squamish government, the native Canadian, First World Indigenous community in Canada. And that accounts for 7 million living men and women who are now treated to the New Earth Nation. We're engaging at the moment with the Polynesian Islands and with some of the Native American communities and indigenous nations of the United States and others around the world. By the end of next year, I would imagine that there will be hundreds of millions of people who have ratified the New Earth Treaty, which is becoming the kind of collective touchstone as a unified treaty. But there are many treaties out there, there's many sovereign nations out there. But one, again, has to understand how the fictions of government have evolved, how they've emerged. They have emerged through treaties. They've emerged through these kinds of covenants and contracts that have been done. But the difference is that in history, those covenants, those contracts were done by fat white men with cigars in the main. Not only, but principally in the last 300 years. We're talking about Anglo-Saxons who've really held the center of this conspiracy. And they are the ones who have been contracting and cutting things up and conducting the wars, conducting the orchestra. Now the difference is we can still engage in contracts and treaties, which we need to do, but we bring those treaties into the light. We create covenants of fellowship. We start to create our own law based on the laws of natural justice. And that's exactly what we're doing.
So, I understand, I think, all the benefits that it has to be part of New Earth Nation. For sure, I feel it would feel much more that we are not alone, we are supported, we have a guidance, all of that. Is there an obligation that we have to keep, or, I just want to know everything so that we can have a clearer idea?
Well, we're inviting our brothers and sisters to join together and create a circle that continues to grow of inward-looking living men and women. So we all face each other in this. We're not isolated and fragmented and fractured and kept separated through artificial wars and economic divides and so on. But where we become inward-looking and we face one another and we essentially recognize that the fundamental value in who and what we are is the exchanges that we have that issue from the heart. And I'm not trying to sound cozy or woo-woo here, but fundamentally it is the love that carries, it's the fellowship that carries, it's the empathic nature, it's how we extend our empathy and our love towards one another. It's how we begin to navigate through the quanta of this reality by seeing through the lens of our hearts and starting to see around corners, starting to relate to people on the other side of the planet, those that we'll never see or touch, but those who are subjected to our actions, which is why I say in the United States, it's a classic example to look at how in the US you folks have been used as the litmus experiment more than any other country on how these Babylonians have been trying to poison your minds, poison your hearts, create these divide and conquer patterns of imperfection which completely permeate the United States, where you've got the very best of the world and the very worst of the world all in one space. But the fundamental driving theme is one of destruction, one of death, one of entropy, one of theft, stealing other nations' wealth, ravaging and ransacking the banks and the mineral deposits and the land assets of Iraq and Libya and all these other nations, and I could name dozens of them since the Second World War. That is how US has maintained the fiction of its supremacy over the rest of the world. I can sit you down with a Kalahari Bushman who's eminently greater than any sitting head of state in the last 1,000 years. A man who understands nature, understands the ether, understands empathy. So don't cock and bull this nonsense any longer. We need to wake up from that kind of dream spelling. You know, CNN and BBC are lying machines. It's what they do. They deceive by their very nature. The university complex in the world and the college complex are also part of that disgusting conspiracy, lying about the advances that we make in technological advances. We could have been powering this planet up on free energy 100 years ago. We know that. The patents exist. If anyone out there is bright enough, go and study the patent directories of Nikola Tesla. Those technologies were around 100 years ago. He offered them freely to the world a 100 years ago. It's only now that we're picking up on that and taking it forward. In point of fact, that Tesla technology I'm referring to, we're going to be offering through the New Earth this next year, 2015.
It's totally right, you know, that I feel so sad that we came to this beautiful piece of land. The American Indians were living in such a beautiful way, you know, and every time that my husband and I go to the mountains, to the wild, we are able to kind of see what they were living here. But coming back to the city is just like so crazy, so disconnected. All the fiction, as you said, that we have created, you need this, you need that, you have to do it that way, is so complicated and so unloving to the earth.
So stop permissioning it.
Huh?
Stop permissioning it. Stop giving it permission. Step out of it.
Layer by layer, we're peeling off our hypnosis, you know, we're giving us steps.
Let me give you a secret.
Yeah.
This magic words. I don't answer questions. 4 words. That's all you need to say to a policeman. That's all you need to say to anyone who's invading or violating your right to go about the surface of the earth unmolested. I don't answer questions, nor should you, to strangers. So if you simply say, I don't answer questions, I don't answer questions, I don't answer questions, I don't answer questions, have a nice day. You look like a thoroughly decent human being to me. I love your coat. That's fine. That's not a question. Questions. Don't answer questions. And if you say, I don't answer questions, there is nothing the system can do in the courtroom or with the police or with the government. Don't answer the questions. Again, when they send you the IRS forms, they're asking you questions. And what you do is you think, oh my God, it's a form. I have to fill it. I have to fill my name in block capital letters. And so you enter the contract by filling the form. Don't do it. Stop answering questions. You don't need to be interrogated as a living man or woman on the face of the earth. You must learn to walk in pure sovereignty, consciousness, honor, and dignity. Do not answer questions under any circumstances unless you choose to of your own free will. If you say to a policeman, I don't answer questions, there's nothing they can do. They would have to break every law by smashing your window in, dragging you out the car, handcuffing you, wrongful arrest, and then kidnap, and you could absolutely prosecute them for it. For kidnap. No joke. Get millions of dollars off them. So if you just learn to be in your center, be calm, do not engage with the fiction of men in costume. It's all that they are. Carrying badges and tasers and guns and nuclear devices, whatever. That's all part of a bad holonomic projection. If I'm not placing my plasma, my aura, into that bad dream will have no traction over me. Yes, I may have my hands manacled behind my back. I may be thrown into the back of a police car. I could choose to regard that as being a beautiful, living, some kind of exercise in consciousness. Or I could choose to be terrified by the experience. But I'll tell you this much, that if you're dealing with someone in costume, or a technocrat, or a bureaucrat, or some functionary of the system who doesn't have the heart intelligence to know what they're doing, and they just want blood, they want violence, they want your pain, they want your suffering, they want your aggression, don't give it to them. Just be peaceable. It's always best in that situation to be peaceable. I've had guns at the head on a couple of occasions myself, and I know how I reacted under those circumstances. It happened to be an incredible centeredness, and it diffused the situation on both occasions, completely diffused them. So we are ultimately controllers of the hologram that unfolds in front of us. If our heart puts out a fear reflex and throws out that electric energy, then the object in front of us responds to that, and it doubles up that electrical value. And the next thing you know, boom, you've got a conflict, you've got a spark. You don't ever need to permission that. As a true sovereign, and all indigenous folks know this, all indigenous wisdom keepers walk with the same certainty, which is why they have this incredible shamanic confidence when you're dealing with the real indigenous wisdom keepers. They don't show too much emotion one way or the other. They don't smile a great deal, and they don't cry. They're just holding counsel. They're holding center. We could learn a great deal from a great many of them.
See, what happens if at some point, let's just say if we do join New Earth Nation, we create our own micronation, what happens if at some point we decide to go back to our previous life, and what would that process look like? Would there be any consequences? What would happen to the land?
Yeah. The first thing that you would do under my recommendation, if you were to remove yourself as a micronation, is go and have a mental health check, because you sure need it. But outside of that, and then after that, of course, you'd want to go and hand over your children and your house to the government, and yourself as well, and offer yourself up for harvest, whereupon I would simply call a prayer circle for you. But you know, yes, of course you have the right to do that. As a sovereign, you have the right to change your mind in anything and everything. Again, you're not handing anything over to us. You are docking. We are allowing you to dock your micronation into the extraterritorial nation, the universal nation that's being created under God's pure law, natural justice. And by God, I mean extension of our highest self, be clear. I'm not talking about some bearded creature that hovers around in the ether.
So then that would mean that the land would come back to the original owner, so the land would be staying with New Earth Nation, or how would that work?
No, of course, we don't take ownership of anything. We're a trust, so we don't own anything. You will always contain your land holdings. We wouldn't want it any other way. I don't want to take on your karma, guys, okay? And my crew do not want to take on your energetic load and your energetic debts. That's not what we've set ourselves up for in this world. What we've done is being, in a sense, stupid enough and in a sense clever enough to simply organize ourselves in a very radical way, and with a very keen understanding of pure law and pure economics, to be able to create this platform that all of us can now lock and load and reclaim our dignity and our sovereignty, and invite the serpent to begin to step down and get thee behind us, Satan.
Thank you. Do you feel we have any other things that we need to ask? Do you have something?
No, I think for now that's good. That's a lot to digest.
I would really appreciate if you got feedback from what we've discussed here, and then let's round in again next week or first week of the new year and go deeper.
Oh yeah.
And then go deep. And then go deeper. And I'm serious. Come at us with everything and anything you can. If you want to get into the real details, get those questions to me in writing so that I can speak to our law and governance faculty or our science and tech faculty or whichever, and then I can have those full answers for you for the next interview.
Thank you so much. I feel that it would be a very important thing to do, maybe to go to Peru to help build the community or something like that. Anything that we can connect.
We would rather work with you in the United States. I think we would rather work with a group of people who are becoming enlightened into this metric in the US, and because we have enough Peruvians out there engaging in the Peru community. We have a few of our team who've flown out there, of course, to guide the process. But we're very keen to begin to engage this in mainland USA.
So, for example, if we
Remember, we're not asking permission from this government. We're not asking permission from any so-called authorities, because we know that under UCC filing in pure law, that the municipal and federal governments are fictions and acting now in fraud and treason. They are not ratified. They're not standing in honor any longer. And that can be empirically proven by law, and will be. There are going to be many tribunals coming up in the next few years.
If we would, for example, start right now, we didn't sell the house yet, so if we would start in this house, could we do that as well, even if we don't have a piece of land?
You could declare that home if you wanted to stay in the home. And the important thing is for you guys to be where you feel you want to be geographically. And if that's in a different part of the world, that's fine. Your sovereignty travels with you. Remember, all borders, all nations are fictions. So when you cross a border and a border patrol and a customs patrol, these people are acting in fraud and treason as well. They're fundamentally transgressing against natural law, which is that they have got to allow living men and women to move freely across the surface of the earth unmolested. That's pure law.
You mentioned also something about sending people to Peru from New Earth Nation. If we would start something here, would somebody come to guide us in some way, or how would that work?
You could absolutely engage with us right now. I mean, just reach out to me. I'll certainly put you in touch with the right folks on our team, and we'll look at what your case is and start helping you. We've been doing this with many people around the world. We have a number of communities who have approached us, and then they have not felt ready to move forward. Some of them have come forward and not understood the protocol, and because they haven't read fully what we've presented to them, and others have fully engaged with us. So people are going to be entering this space in proportion to their capacity to understand the law aspects. So everyone who does engage here has to really begin to understand what it is that they're doing. But that's the point, is it not? That all of us need to now begin to understand the distinction between living a life and living a fiction. One is a conscious and sovereign expression of creative free will, and the other one is an indentured slave, no different to the cotton pickers, 200 years ago, where we are working for the man, and we live in fear of the man, and we will ultimately be killed by the man. What I mean is the man is responsible for the Monsantos of the world, for poisoning our environment, poisoning our food and our water, and so on and so on. So it's a matter for us to step outside of the fictions. That's the only thing that matters, which means really get to grips with understanding what's being put forth. If you go to the Law and Governance faculty of the New Earth Nation online, even this portal that's up, not the one that's the new one that's launching in January, even the one that is out there now, you can get all of this information by going through that Law and Governance faculty.
Okay, Sacha, thank you so much for answering all these questions and for your willingness to help. Thank you so much.
My great pleasure. I really look forward to the next time, and I really want these questions to become more and more razor sharp so that we can answer every single element of fear that exists. And I salute both of you for being at the tip of the spear of transformation and spiritual renaissance in the United States.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Sacha.